I'd like to invite Mr. Peter Horszowski from PERT to stage. This is to stage, and he's going to share with us some of the innovations from PASCO that we can take on board, as well as an interesting presentation on crash barriers. Peter, welcome to your world at the 2023 ATTC.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Thank you for your attention. I'm Peter from PERT Industrials, representing PASCO Scientific. And for a few minutes this afternoon, I'd like to show you how a few small details, minor changes, can make a big difference in how you do science investigations and science experiments. So, learners, when they do mechanics and physics, when they start, the first thing they kind of rub up against is Newton's first law of motion. First law of motion, which says an object will stay in its state. It will carry on in motion or at rest unless you apply a force to it. Now, the problem is this doesn't seem to actually work. It's not exactly obvious. So if I can show you this is kind of, when I sort of release the little force that I apply to it, it stops. It stops on its own, and we see this all the time. If we have a car on a driveway and it's level, if you push it, it'll stop. So it seems that this primary, fundamental law of motion doesn't really work. So now I'd like to show you this. This is the PASCO super pulley. It's at rest, you guys can see that. I'm going to apply a little force. Behold, Newton's first law of motion. It continues until I apply a force. Let me show you this again. It continues in its state, which in this case is constant velocity or a motion, until I apply a force. It works. Students can actually see this principle in action. They can visualize it immediately, and if you use it in an experiment or an investigation, the results you get are a lot more meaningful, and they make sort of sense relating to your theory. Learners they sort of put the theory in the textbook and the practical in its own little silo because they don't seem to match. But if you've got little, well-designed pieces of equipment, then your knowledge, your theory can actually match your practice, and then the whole thing can start being much more meaningful to you. And there can be sort of practical considerations as well. So this is from our own line of engineering apparatus. Now you see these little springs, which seem a bit awkward and strange. I'm fingering them here. Why the springs? Well, if you put your power supplies and your measurement instruments, they can be held easily in place on top or on the side. And when you adjust your circuit, the supplies and the measurement tools, they stay in place. Now, it seems like a minor point, but it is super useful when you're doing a lab because you always have to change something. And if you have to disassemble everything just to make a minor adjustment in the circuit, well, that can really can drive you crazy. It has done me a few times when I've been running labs with some teachers. Okay, back to PASCO. This here is the wireless smart cart. Smart, kind of in the way Darren was talking about. I think we in sort of UK English might say clever trolley. Smart cart's got the little rhyme, so it's also actually, as you can see, says smart cart. Why is it smart? Well, it's got a whole lot of sensors on board. Sensors like force and acceleration. Force in this little bumper over here, and acceleration in the trolley. So, physically, I can interact with this thing. Let me just start it connecting. Physically, I can interact, using just my own motion, my hand, pulling on this, feeling the force, feeling the acceleration physically, and the trolley, as you'll see over here, is working and plotting in real time the force and the acceleration that it experiences. So this relationship, if you guys have ever worked with this now, second law, you'll see that this linear relationship, this direct relationship between force and acceleration, it evolves live. And this particular slope here, which I think I can have a look at here, is the mass of the trolley. So you can start actually, you can weigh things. You can put a cell phone on this, just jiggle it a bit and weigh it. Learners really respond well to that kind of thing where it's not just a theory, but you can actually make it do something cool. Okay, the last thing I'll show you is this. Remember I mentioned these little details. So in here, the force sensor that I was using now for Newton's second law, for the third and final of Newton's laws, I'll show you a little something that's a detail that maybe keep your eyes on this collision at the end. I'm going to do it a few times. You might notice something unusual. Pay attention. You can see it bounces back, which is what you expect, but there's something unusual that happens, and if I go quite close, you'll see it. There isn't actually a physical contact. There are in this bumper where the force sensor is, there's a very powerful magnet. The same thing's on this end stop over here. Why? Well, it means that you can look at momentum and collisions without actually losing any energy in the collision. You won't have any sound, deformation, anything happening. So you can study collisions in an ideal environment. And just like with this super pulley, you can get results that make sense because they're not insulated from your theory. It's not like, well, here, this is what it says in the textbook, but of course in practice it doesn't actually work. It does because of the design and the implementation. So yeah, that, sorry, just looking around for my clicker. So if you have a look at a possible application, an activity, what can you do with these principles? Well, in this case, here's a design challenge. Say you have this trolley hitting the bumper. How do you insulate that force? How do you slow down that collision in such a way that what you've got here is a force is experienced, but you want to minimize that force. So, you know, using your available materials, things around the house, toilet paper, cotton, straws, elastic bands, whatever might be available, you can design your own crash bumper. And the idea is that you want to increase the time of the impact. That's the theory behind crash bumpers. You want to make the force a little bit less by increasing how long the force operates. And you can do that yourself physically. You design it yourself. There's a challenge. You don't want to exceed, say, 10 newtons or 15 newtons. And using materials which are available, you can, there's a few instructions on how to connect and what it means, and then apply your design to the principles that, again, are in your book. So, I mean, I hope that that gives you the idea that these things, when you actually do the practical, it can work. If it works, you can understand it a bit better, and if you understand it a bit better with an interesting, challenging activity like this design challenge, you can make it into something that is useful and applicable. Learners, I keep using this term silo. It was a customer of mine who at University of the Western Cape, Ian Schroeder, who told me about this. Learners tend to isolate things. There's theory, there's practice, there's the real world. Science doesn't work like this, and using devices like this, you can break down these silos and get it all together. So thank you very much for your attention. That's what I wanted to share with you. So perhaps, Kathy, if you can give us a bit of feedback, and I can hopefully help you a bit. Thank you.
Peter, class was still in session.
Oh.
I was still enjoying that. It felt like it ended so quickly.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that.
In fact, part of what you did here reminds me of what Rapelang was saying earlier, that learning should actually be about creating experiences. Yeah. I've never been one to get into all of this, but certainly you created an experience that wanted me to learn more about what you're doing. And I think that's the power of some of these tools.
That's exactly right. Yes,
Yeah.
it can really...
I've got some questions for you here.
Sure.
Lichelle Bernard wants to know, how much do these resources cost, more or less?
The first question.
Anything similar like this for teaching mathematics?
Okay. Well, I'm very pleased that Darren was here before, and he
Well,
said
whatever you say after
everybody
that.
has to sit down. So compared to that, look, this system here, we normally have a combination, which is the two different trolleys, these two smart carts, a couple of different tracks and some accessories for grade 10 to 12 FETs, and that's about 15,000 Rand. So it's not cheap, but it covers a lot of material, and you can do student projects, which a lot of schools enjoy. So that design challenge, it's a project, and there are many other projects that you can do. So around about 15,000 Rand. So I think your second question was about the maths.
Yes.
So I did this very quickly, the analysis of this relationship.
Yes.
But there are many more software tools in statistics, in like this is a linear relationship, but there's many other kinds of mathematical relationships that you can explore. So it does have real-world science and the maths that models it or describes it.
Lichelle wants to know, and she's asking, my learners would love to learn more about this in the same way that I would have. Is there a way to bring it in the classroom or expos regarding this where we can take learners, or maybe somebody who does in-person presentations on it?
Okay, so there are science centers around the country, Saibono, Cape Town Science Centre, all over South Africa. Most of them have this equipment. And so if you go, you can do many labs at these science centers. In the Cape Town Science Centre, they run regular labs. I'm from Cape Town, so I know those guys, and they're awesome. Yeah. Shout out. But this is, a small investment at a school can go a long way. So we sell directly to schools, and then we train the teachers, and we run workshops with the teachers. Many schools around the country and all of the universities have this equipment. So yes, then the students can do hands-on work, and the teachers will have hopefully the tools to do these kinds of demonstrations and investigations.
All right. I also see from Cynthia that you're going to be demonstrating these apparatus on the 20th of June
Cynthia
for
Moringa.
for a practical session.
Correct.
Tell us more about it so that our teachers who are interested in that session and how they can then come be part of it.
Okay, we've got space for 20, so hopefully at least 20.
Look, we've got 1,000 teachers. I don't know what you're going to do.
Okay, so exactly, thank you for that. So on the 20th, which I think is next week, Tuesday, there's a practical day, and at our factory at Pert Industrials, which is not far from here, it's about 5 kilometers from here in Kew, we're going to have many stations of these available, as well as some of our engineering equipment for electronics experiments, and we're going to have demonstrations, and the teachers will have the opportunity to duplicate the demonstrations or hopefully extend them with their own hands-on work. Yeah.
Peter, what is it going to take this? It looks simple enough. It doesn't look like it requires that much. We spoke about how much it costs, but what would it take to get this into the institutions that need it the most?
Money. Is Sasol listening? Yeah, so I think.
Sasol, we know you've done so much already.
Yes, we're not saying you haven't done.
Kagiso Trust, we know you've done so much already. That said, we just want to add. Go for it, Peter.
No, exactly. So really, the stuff is, it's well priced, it's cost effective, we believe, but it does require some funding. Most schools don't really have a budget for this kind of practical material. They don't have a budget for doing practical work, So some sponsorship, and we'll help. I mean, we won't just give it to the schools and say, good luck, guys, here's the notes. We will train the teachers. We will, participate. We want to make a difference.
Well, it looks like there's a great deal of appetite for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Really incredible seeing how learning can also be transformed.